Our state has some incredible problems. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. I'm here to talk about that with you and talk about the trends that have shaped this state and dragged us in one direction or another. We're not really we're not realizing the dream we had way back in the early 2000s or even around 2008 or 9 or 10. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. Welcome to WOWBIZ Nebraska. We're going to get it on right now. As a person who's interested in growing their business, there's one word that kind of encapsulates the entire thing, and that word is build. We're going to talk about building today. Thanks for joining me here on WOWBIZ Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker, and by the way, before we introduce you to our first guest having to do with building, I want to mention our sponsors. We're brought to you by Curzon Promotional Graphics. That's C-U-R-Z-O-N, Curzon Promotional Graphics. Please contact them first if you're thinking about getting some creative ideas, you need some graphics materials of all kinds, from big signs to small graphics. Please contact Curzon Promotional Graphics. And then Alpha Tech One is our secondary sponsor. They do an incredible thing. If your computer needs some assistance, it's not working very well, kind of sluggish, they will come to your home or your office and pick it up, take it back, and get it fixed for you. alphatech1.com. Please make sure you check them out. We're very grateful to have those people involved with our program. All right, we're going to get back to build and building your future and talking a little bit about literally construction right here on WOWBIZ Nebraska. And that's why I'm going to introduce you to Dave Rosacker. Dave, great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you being here. Dave, you're a veteran in the local construction and management industry. Why don't you just give us a quick tab of how you define yourself and what you've been doing the last 30, 40 years, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Well, the word build really says it. It says it all. That,
yep.
That's our entire focus. We are a owner-focused, fee-based construction management firm.
All right, now let me just say that again. Owner-focused, which means you're kind of working with the owners.
Correct.
All right. Fee-based, you stick that right in early on so that we all know you're not a commission-based company, right? Kind of like the insurance industry in a way there. Yeah, and then what was the third part that you said? Fee-based?
Owner-focused.
Okay, all right.
Construction management firm. So
okay.
We like to take the owners, we have a passion for this industry that we like to protect our owners throughout the whole process.
Right.
Which is a very unusual process for most people. They don't build frequently. And
oh,
so
yeah.
they
you might build one $5 or $10 million building in your life.
Correct.
You know.
And so it's something that they're not normally familiar with, and so we like to guide them through the process.
Yes.
And protect their interests from the very inception of it to the final entering the key in the door to walk in the door.
Okay, so this is a classic consulting service, kind of a value-added consulting role.
Yes.
Okay, outstanding. Now, what makes you qualified to do this? Let's back up and say, what is a guy who's done this pretty much his entire career? Where did you start? Did you wake up one day and say, I want to know everything there is to know about constructing a building, or did you work out in the field, or what'd you do?
Well, I worked, I came from a small town.
Yeah.
And so when I went to college, I liked drawing, so I started in architecture. But
okay.
Being an outdoor type guy, I found that sounded to me a little too restrictive. And so when I found out that there was a degree available in construction management that blended engineering and business, I felt that was a better career for me, so I can be out and do things. So.
But you also do have some skill in terms of the drawing and the conceptualizing it initially.
Right. And so, of course, the training, but you have to understand how to take a two-dimensional drawing and create it in your mind before you can build it in person.
Right, right.
And so you have to understand how that works.
Yeah, that's a creative process as well. I appreciate the fact that you're a creative person, but you're also a tangible, kind of hands-on detail person. Yeah. It's a very interesting combination. Now, let's take the big picture. Over the course of 40 years here in the Nebraska area, what have you seen that kind of stands out in the construction industry? What are you seeing that has changed? For instance, the design-build paradigm has emerged. Why don't you explain that to our viewers? A lot of people may not really know what that means.
The traditional methodology would be for an architect to draw the set of drawings, and they send it out to multiple general contractors to bid it, and then normally the lowest bidder is selected, and then they build the building for them.
Right.
Then, as you mentioned, the design-build came along, where there's an expertise that's available on the design side, but there's also an expertise available on the construction side. When you can bring those two together, then you get the benefits of both, so you don't have something that's designed that is really too difficult to be built. or too expensive to be built.
I see, interesting. And is that really changing everything? Is that what everybody is doing now, or not?
Well, I would say that with the advancement, I would say, of the technologies and also the techniques that are available through the construction management and general construction industry, it's becoming more of a professional service as well, because then you work in collaboration with the architect more often, and so I think the industry, or the marketplace, if you will, is starting to recognize the value of both.
Okay, all right, excellent. Now, if somebody said, I want to know roughly now, not in too much detail, how many steps and phases? Once it's decided there is money, we do have a plan that we kind of like, how many steps or phases is involved in constructing a commercial building, a 3 or 4 story office building?
Well, from the very inception, if you would, obviously there's a pro forma that's normally developed if it's a business situation that validates the need for it, and they start to defining what that need is. Then they bring in the design. So that's the next phase, you know, the conception of the financial side, then the conception of the physical side.
Got it.
And then as that goes through, that's usually 2 or 3 stages to refine that design to the point where it's finalized. And at that point, then the contractor in the traditional method is brought in, and then the construction phase, and then the move-in phase. Those are the broadest phases that we have.
Okay, and somebody's got to get the materials and get them on the site. Right? Then we got to get the people, and some work for the GC, but then they have got to involve subcontractors as well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that phase, kind of in the field?
Okay, as in the old days, there were a lot more broad, I guess, disciplines that people had, and so today the skill sets are a lot more tight of what they're good at, and technology has changed, so the technology is more specific to different things.
Okay.
So
now, specialists, a lot of specialists.
A lot of specialists. So it's not unusual to have 30 or 40 different companies involved in a whole project.
Really?
So that they each have their own little segments. So what happens is our project activity really becomes almost like the conductor of an orchestra. We have all these different instruments out there that we have to bring in at the right time and get them to do what they're supposed to do, and then send them back out.
That's quite a choreography that you've got to pull together. Are there problems all the time with these people? They're not showing up, or they don't do it right, or whatever. I mean, is there a lot of problems in the field that have to be solved, or generally it flows pretty smoothly?
Well, I mean, it's
really,
it's a
broad question.
Yeah, if it was that smooth, they wouldn't need me.
Right.
But
let's hope it doesn't get too smooth, right?
Yes, that's right. Obviously, there are so many different moving parts, different manufacturers and distributors, and then the people in the field that are actually physically doing the work, orchestrating all of those schedules together and making them happen on schedule. Obviously, things can happen. It can be a transmission or
I would think a lot of things bad could
happen.
happen.
Then you have to realize it's really a manufacturing process. One time that'll never be repeated for that building. Yeah. And then it also is out in the weather. Yeah. And so you're subjected to everything else that goes on. So it's like manufacturing, but with a lot more variables.
You know, this is fascinating, and I would like to go deeper in it, but I want to hear about your personal story. One day did you wake up and say, I'm really good at this, and I want to enjoy doing guiding and choreographing the development of these buildings? So what was the realization? What triggered that?
Well, you know, you're always improving. So I'm a kind of a perfectionist, so I'm probably never good, you know, or I'm say I'm the best, but I'm learning every day. But obviously over a 40-plus year experience, you learn how to do certain things. Sure. Techniques change, methodologies change, and so you have to be current with all of those things.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a minute.
But it's something that really, at the end of the day, there is a big technical aspect that obviously is involved, because there's technical activities that take place. But at the end of the day, it's an organization of people. Everything that has to happen on a site has to be done by a person. Yeah. And so our job is to make sure that all those people are pointed in the same direction, motivated, and that they understand that the owner needs to have what we've
Right.
had designed for us to build. So.
Dave, is there miscommunication a lot between all these different people, and they're all working for different companies and so on? Do they get in each other's hair, or is there, again, fairly smooth interaction between them?
Well, people are people, and fortunately we have, as all of the society has, we've got a lot better communication tools than we used to have.
Yes.
When I first started, all we had is a phone on the desk and mail.
Right.
And so the time that it takes in those days, even
Yes.
to get a letter out of your office, because the secretary had to type it.
Yes.
Most of us didn't know how to type.
Right.
And so everything's a lot more immediate. Well, all that brings a lot of efficiencies, but it also brings a lot of miscommunications, because it's very easy if something happens on the job site and it's messed up or whatever, it's really easy to let your emotions react.
Yeah.
And so you send out an immediate email without thinking out, or a text or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So through that, we see more miscommunications there. There's less thought before a communication is issued than there was in the past. And so sometimes we have to deal with those.
Sure. Kind of as we wrap up, this has been fascinating. What would be your one comment to a build, not a builder, but a company that wants to build a new building? What would be the one piece of advice or a suggestion that you would make to them, besides hire me to orchestrate the process? But what don't they know that would be much more helpful if they just understood one thing?
Well, I think that, whether it's me or someone else, that the team, to be complete, needs the architect, needs the financing side, and it needs the construction side. If you bring all three of those together,
Yes.
you can balance the specific situation for the owner. Every owner is different. You may be building the exact same building or type of building,
Yeah.
but every owner is going to be. I mean, if you and I both went out to buy a Cadillac, we
Sure.
wouldn't buy the same one.
Sure.
And the same way for a building. And so the more information that can be provided to the owner while this process is ongoing, the more likely it is that when he gets to the end, he has exactly the product that he wants.
So a flow of constant communication or information to the owner,
Correct.
so they know where we're at, what's going, what's next, and all that.
Correct.
Yeah. Outstanding. Well, your organization is called R&A. It's out in Northwest Omaha. You've been doing it for an awful long time. And you're working increasingly in commercial or residential or whatever comes along.
Occasionally commercial, but multifamily commercial, all kinds of commercial and industrial we've done over the
Outstanding.
years.
Okay.
12
beautiful.
states.
Well, Dave Rosacker, thank you so much for joining us and just letting us peek into your world, because it's a complicated world. There's a lot of players. Bringing them together, getting them to work together cohesively is not a little thing. And if I were owner of a project like this and getting started on something, I would want somebody like you to provide that objective oversight and just keep everybody moving in the same direction. I think I'd probably sleep better at night
You should be able
if
to.
you don't know what I mean. So thanks so much for coming,
you.
Dave.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure. We'll be back in a minute, but I do want to talk to you a little bit about the sponsors of this program. WOWBIZ Nebraska is a unique show. It's brought to you by two unique sponsors, Curzon Promotional Graphics, as well as Alpha Tech One. So Alpha Tech One and Curzon Promotional Graphics have stuck with us all the way. If you need graphics, you need an idea, you need a concept, you need a visual, absolutely call them. And of course, Alpha Tech One will take care of all your infections and viruses that take place with your computer. So please talk to either one of them and mention WOWBIZ Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinterrocker. We'll be right back with a special segment. Stick with us. Thanks again. How could an outsider play a constructive and strategic role in your organization? It's an interesting idea, thinking about an outside influence coming into your world and helping you grow or kind of burst through some kind of a organizational inertia or some barrier that you're dealing with. We're We're going to talk about that here for just a few minutes. It's a very interesting thing, it has to do with creativity and under what circumstances and conditions creativity can be unleashed inside of your organization for everybody's greater good. Now I'm going to back up for a second and thank you again for joining me here on WOWBIZ TV. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker. Do you remember back in 2015, all right, it's a ways back now, there was a terrible incident in San Bernardino, California. You might recall, so the terrorists were there and they actually killed, I believe, 14 people. It was a terrible thing. Everybody knew about this at the time, and I think there were 22 people injured. And obviously the Justice Department and the local area police and so on were all over this situation, trying to figure out what motivated these people, how come we didn't detect them, or who are they, and why did they do this, and so on. It was a very sad and dramatic unfolding of events. And because of the fact that, that these terrorists had an iPhone, right? And people quickly deduced, officials figured out that there could be a lot of extremely valuable information on this iPhone. So they had to get into the iPhone. Now that meant that Apple had to cooperate with them. And that meant that Tim Cook, who was the CEO of Apple at that time, of course, had to cooperate, had to give away basically the secrets that were encrypted inside of this phone. Now, it's a very challenging and complex idea. The software is proprietary, and understandably, Tim Cook was very reluctant to tell people how to break the encryption that hid and kept prisoner all this important data that could have told all the officials, police officials and so on, why these people did what they did, what their motive was, and so on and so forth. It's a big, tough problem. It went all the way to the highest courts of the land. It was kind of stalemated. Meanwhile, of course, all of us were sitting around saying, can't you figure out how to open up the phone and find out what was going on? What was going on with these people, right? And they couldn't get it done. It was a real interesting stalemate. Now suddenly, and Tim Cook was not cooperating, Apple was not cooperating in this very dramatic incident. The Justice Department finally took control of the whole situation, and they stepped outside of their world. Notice the word outside. They stepped outside of their world and they found two software, I'll call them geniuses for lack of a better word, people from the private sector, people nobody knew from Adam, right? And brought them in, and these two people, and they went unnamed, by the way, were able to crack the code. They were able to break into the iPhone's encryption, reveal the data, and that helped obviously resolve the entire case. And finally, we were all satisfied as we understanding the motive and who they talked to and all that. It was very important. It was very interesting that they couldn't get it done through the normal channels. They had to reach outside and pull two people, freelancers essentially, consultants in the technology industry, in to open it all up. Now, my question to you, and this is a challenge, are there situations that you are dealing with inside your company, cultural things, growth, sales, expansion, maybe technology, by the way, that are just not moving forward the way you'd like them to? You know there's an issue there. You know there's something there, and it might go unnamed, right? Your team may not want to actually broach the topic or the point, well, I'm going to call it the point of resistance. Because all of us have kind of a deeper level of resistance, something we don't want to face. Usually we don't want to face it about ourselves, or we don't want to face it about the culture of the company that we're leading and whatever. And so because of that, it just kind of slips away, and that becomes our invisible barrier to being creative and being innovative and moving forward with our company. It's a very, very common thing. But what isn't so common is the courage to reach outside your immediate environment and bring an outsider in. To bring in an outsider. This is extremely important. Creativity from the outside. Now, when you can unleash creativity, the first thing, of course, you want to ask yourself, how do we become creative? Or what is this person that we're talking about going to do to unleash creativity within our culture so we can all of a sudden do something or see something we hadn't seen before? This is a very interesting question. So basically, right? Basically, we go through a process of analysis. We break things down. Chop, 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 chop. Right? We get them on the table. This is how the culture is. This is how the people are. This is how the competition does. These are the trends surrounding the entire industry. Chop it all up. Right? Tiny little pieces, all disconnected from each other. You with me so far? All right, now, creativity comes in when you start to connect these pieces in ways they haven't been connected before. And I know that sounds kind of a little weird, and maybe it's hard to, but you've heard this phrase before, connect the dots. He's really good at connecting the dots. In other words, disparate pieces of information, research, some comment, something that's happening at a trade show or an industry event, whatever it is, and finding the disparate connection, putting them all together into a new picture, shall we say, or a mosaic, where you go, what if we did this? This could be a different business model. If we do this, then we could serve all these people who don't ever buy our product because we've got a new angle or a new capability, or we add value in different ways. They're being creative, and we're thinking about this now. How does this happen, and why can that happen with an outsider in particular? Because I got to tell you, to get innovation, you have to fuel it with creativity, but there's something that's usually missing, and that is trust. Trust. Now, why does trust matter? Right? Because you have to be able to give yourself and the people around you the freedom to fail. You basically got to say, I won't fire you if this doesn't work. All right? I'm simplifying it, but that's really the deal. People go, well, I've had this idea for a couple of years. We could do this, but I don't want to be I don't want to be wrong, right? I don't want to make a mistake. So you've got to convey trust in order to unleash innovation, which comes out of creativity. It seems common sense, but it often cannot happen for unspoken reasons until an outsider comes in and there's some kind of a shock. You can call it a catalyst, but let's call it a shock. Now, usually this outside catalyst will create new energy. You say, what are we talking about here, right? So let's back up for a second. Let's talk about the more progressive group in our employee base, which is millennials. Young people, they're wide open in their thoughts and ideas. And one of the things, if you talk to a millennial, they will quickly agree and say, everything's energy, right? You got that? Everybody understands that everything around us, in us, everything's energy, right? Right. We got that. We understand that. Energy. Now, all energy vibrates at a certain frequency. Everybody get that? Yeah, I think I get that. All right? We've heard that before. That's not new news, although it may be a little bit difficult to apply in certain situations. So here we are. We're trying to figure out how to get from A to Z, right? And we know that energy is involved, and that's what we're ultimately trying to do if we're innovating and being creative. So let me tell you how to think about this so that it's a little easier to absorb. Think about a piano. Think about one octave on a piano, all right? It goes C, right? Middle C, everybody knows that, right? C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, right? Right? 7, 8 keys right there. It's very interesting, the placement. You just stood and took a look at a keyboard on a piano, and as it goes up and down, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, right? But it's very interesting. It goes white, black, but then when it gets to the third white key, stick with me on this, there's no black key. It goes right from C, D, E, F, goes from E to F, no black key. Why is that, right? We all know the keys hit the things back in the piano, and there's vibration. We know, we get that basic idea. Then we go on up there, F, G, A, B, once again, between B and C, right? Between B and C. There's no black key there. There's 2 places in an octave where there's no black key. Now we're talking about vibration. We're talking about projects. Every single project that you embark on, everything you do has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And have you ever noticed that at certain points in a project, try to launch a new product, you try to redecorate your home, whatever it is, you take a couple, 2, 3 steps into it, and then you kind of hit a wall. You ever notice that? You kind of hit a wall. That's that area there. It goes white key, no black key in the middle. It doesn't follow the pattern, right? And then there's something that comes from outside. Here we go on the outsider and the creativity. Some shock. Something comes from outside at that one point on the progression of the octave, and in any project you're involved in, whether it's launching a new product or whatever. That's what we need. That's what we need to move past our barriers, to move past our cultural and psychological resistance. We need an outside shock. Could be a piece of new information. I never saw that before. If we did that, that's a really interesting statistic. If that's true, then blah, blah, blah. Let's get going. Or maybe it's a consultant, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a trainer, maybe it's some outside person that says, you know what, I can kind of get involved with you here and kind of get you going. Get you through the octave, get you all the way up to and there's one more place. Before you finish a project, you kind of feel blocked again. We're not getting there. We're not getting where we want to go. Need another outside shock. Now, this is all exemplified and demonstrated in these 8 keys on a simple octave, and as we play a piano, boom, 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 boom. But it's symbolic of how we can necessarily unleash, get to the right frequencies, unleash the right level of energy as we progress, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, all the way through 8 steps in an octave. And that's why an outsider, much like Tim Cook, or the Justice Department, they pulled in outsiders to try to figure out how to get into this encrypted area on that iPhone. Now, this is an unusual information. I'm sharing some very inside information about the process of creativity and progress. All right? It's give you clarity. This will give you courage. It'll help you unleash the doors so you can become an innovative company that is fully differentiating itself, going all the way from here to there. I want to thank you so much for being patient with me and listening to this, because it's so important to know when to get that outside shock into your world, into your business, to try to help you go from here to there. And whatever, if they succeed, they're bringing new energy. And as you know, energy vibrates. All right, energy vibrates. We're vibrating right now, right here on WOWBIZ Nebraska. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker. We always bring you insight into business strategy, innovation. Next week, I'm going to be talking to you about branding. What is branding? Why would anybody care about differentiating themselves or having an interesting and unusual brand? What is your personal brand? What is experiential branding? We're going to cover all that on our next show. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time on WOWBIZ Nebraska. Thanks for watching.